Please, everybody, silence your phones. Silence your phones. Thank you for joining us this evening. Please rise and join Sammy Schechter as we sing the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose bright stripes and bright stars through the perilous fights o'er the rampart we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? On Mount Eva, Penima, Nefesh Yehudi, Homiya, Ufatei Mizrach, Kadima, Ayin Letzion, Sophia,
Yishamer lecha ushmar nafshecha me'od. Pen tishkach et hadvarim asher re'u einecha, upen yasuru milvavecha kol yamei chayecha, v'hodatam levanecha u'libnei banecha. Only guard yourself and guard your soul carefully, lest you forget the things your eyes saw, and lest these things depart your heart all the days of your life. And you shall make them known to your children and to your children's children. Tonight, we gather to remember the 6 million souls who were taken from us by the Nazis during World War II. Taken from their homes, families ripped apart, lives cut short. We remember those who perished, we remember those who survived, and we remember the future, for which we must continue to live and to learn. Tonight is an expression of choice. We choose to remember. We choose to use the lessons of the Holocaust to inform our past, present, and future. During the Holocaust, those who were persecuted did not have choice. Their fate lay in the choices of others, the choice to turn away or to act, to hinder or to help, to slaughter or to save. The perpetrators chose. They chose to terminate good, happiness, and even life itself. They chose to malign, corrupt, and destroy humanity with violence and murder. The rescuers chose as well. They chose to treasure, protect, and save life, to guard and embody the morality that was slowly being obliterated by the Nazis. Each man and each woman made his or her own choice. Tonight, as we remember the loss of life we have endured, we also commemorate the power of choice. For it is by choice that brave men and women put their own lives in danger to stay true to the moral compass that guided them in saving the lives of others. Despite danger to themselves and their families, rescuers during the Holocaust chose to do what was right and save life rather than destroy it. Leopold Socha was a poor Polish man who worked in the sewer system. When he discovered a number of Jews hiding in the sewers, together with his wife and a fellow worker, he chose to guide them through the sewer system and provide them with much-needed food and supplies. 16-year-old Ravik Vasily chose to hide the Mandil family, including their 2 young children, in his family's barn, providing them with food and with shelter. This year marks 100 years since the birth of Raoul Wallenberg, an ordinary man whose extraordinary choices set him apart. Raoul Wallenberg was recruited by the U.S. War Refugee Board to act as a diplomat to the Swedish legation in Hungary. He was charged with a single task: save and assist as many Hungarian Jews as possible. He distributed certificates of protection from Swedish legation to Jews in Budapest. He designated safe houses and established hospitals and nurseries in the international ghetto. His work saved hundreds of thousands of Jews from deportation to Auschwitz-Birkenau, where they would have likely met their death. He did whatever he could to save whomever he could. These people were ordinary men and women who were motivated by the atrocities of their surroundings to take action. Their choices, their actions, were powerful enough to save the most precious commodity we have, which we so often take for granted: life itself. Tonight, we remember those choices. Remembrance is a powerful tool, enabling us to learn from our past in order to inform and to affect our future. Its power comes from its strong and ever-present call to action. It bellows to us not only to remember the choices and actions made in the past, but to learn from those choices and actions and improve upon our own, bettering the world we live in and humanity itself. As we remember those who are no longer with us, as we listen to and learn from the stories of those who survived, let us also learn from those who chose to act. Let us use tonight to not only realize the power of remembrance, but to actualize remembrance in our choices and our actions. For as the psychiatrist and survivor Viktor Frankl said, it did not really matter what we expected from life, but rather what life expected from us. We needed to stop asking about the meaning of life and instead to think of ourselves as those who are being questioned by life, daily and hourly. Our answer must consist not in talk and meditation, but in right action and right conduct. Life ultimately means taking the responsibility to find the right answer to its problems and to fulfill the tasks which it constantly sets for each individual. I would like to call upon Rabbi Blau to recite Yizkor. Please rise.
Avinu Malkeinu El Elohei HaRuchos B'chol Basar Tein Menucha Nachona Al Kanfei HaShchina B'ma'alos Kedoshim U'Tahorim Kizohar HaRakia Mazhirim Edishmoseihem Shel Sheish Me'os Rivivos Alfei Yisrael Anoshim V'Noshim Yeladim v'yelados, shenehergu, v'shenitbechu, v'shenechneku, v'shenitberu, chayim, b'yad, miflitzos hatzorim, b'galus Europa, kulam kedoshim u'tahorim, b'hem, gaonim u'tzadikim, Arzei HaLvanon V'adirei HaTorah B'gan Eden Tehei Menuchasam Lochein Baal HaRachamim Yitzror B'tzror HaChayim Es Nishmosam Adonai Nachalasam U'zachor Lanu Akedasam V'sa'amod Lanu L'chol Yisrael Zechusam Eretz al T'chasi Damam V'al Yehi Makom V'za'akasam V'zchusam Nidchei Yisrael Yashuvu L'achuzasam V'hakdoshim L'zichron Tamid Neged Einecha Tzidkasam Yavo Shalom Yanuchu al mishkivosam v'nomar amen.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight as we remember our brethren who perished in the Holocaust, as well as commemorate and extol the selfless acts of salvation that a precious few righteous saviors undertook during those 6 horrifying years. Despite the threat of death and the fear of discovery, these rescuers pierced the veil of indifference and conquered the apathy and trepidation that paralyzed their neighbors and friends. Despite the 67 years that have elapsed since the heroic protection of these rescuers was no longer needed, the lessons that emerge from those dark years in our history endure, urging us to revisit them and instill their message in our social consciousness. One of these important lessons is the need to create a culture that nurtures the rescuer mentality. What is the nature of a rescuer? How are they able to rise above the popular social dogma and stay true to their morality, despite the grave personal risks that they undertook? And how can we ensure that our current society is one that embraces the mentality of an upstander to combat injustice? These questions are not easily answered. However, there are experts who have made it their life's work to parse the ambiguity that clouds this crucial question. Dr. Eva Fogelman has conducted some of the seminal research on the question of rescuer mentality, including her doctoral dissertation entitled The Rescuers, a Socio-Psychological Study of Altruistic Behavior During the Nazi Era, and her Pulitzer Prize nominated book, Conscience and Courage, Rescuers of Jews During the Holocaust. Both of these important works aim to uncover and illuminate the psychology and history of the people who defied German law during the Third Reich and who did not succumb to moral cowardice. Dr. Fogelman has also dedicated her professional life to serving the needs of survivors and their children. She has been involved in the creation of numerous associations and conferences that provide forums for children of survivors to embrace their past. These include the National Association of Child Holocaust Survivors, the World Federation of Jewish Child Survivors of the Holocaust, and the Jewish Foundation for the Righteous. Along with her colleague, Bella Savra, Dr. Fogelman was among the first psychologists to lead groups for children of survivors. It is an honor to have Dr. Fogelman with us tonight to share her knowledge and her insights, and it is my pleasure to welcome her to Yeshiva University.
Members of the board, Roshei Yeshiva, honored rabbis, Gvurotai v'Rabotai. It is truly an honor for me to be here at Yeshiva University for this Yom Hashoa commemoration. Significant is that this event is organized by the students, our next generation. I don't think there is a campus on the United States campuses or in Israel that has so many people coming to a Holocaust commemoration. Congratulations to all the organizers. The notion of rescue is well established in the realm of halakha. But when Jews think of rescue, it generally refers to pidyon shvuim, the redeeming of captives and hostages, a trope that has played out numerous times in the course of our history. Our recent history, however, has given Jews a new iteration of rescue, the rescue of Jews by non-Jews during the Second World War, the destruction of European Jewry. We Jews have another construct, that of Hasidei Umot HaOlam, the righteous amongst the nations of the world, also known in the rabbinic tradition. Christians who rescued Jews during the Shoah are modern exemplars of Hasidei Umot HaOlam. The recognition of righteous Gentiles is recorded early in rabbinic period. In Tosefta Sanhedrin 13:2, the teaching of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Hananiah, the righteous of all the nations shall have a share in the world to come, became an accepted doctrine in traditional Judaism. Of course, Jewish attitudes towards the Gentile world were largely conditioned by the political, economic, and social treatment of Jews. The repeated persecutions and expulsions of Jews from Christian lands explain the predominantly negative perception of Gentiles prior to the Enlightenment. Nonetheless, even during the times of oppression, the rabbis never disavowed their belief in the potential worth of individual Gentiles. The Tana Devei Eliyahu Zuta affirms that the righteous amongst the Gentiles are the priests of God. How did this play out in recent history? In 1953, when the State of Israel had just been created and was still struggling with the absorption of immigrants, securing a homeland, Ben-Gurion, the prime minister at the time, called a special session of the Knesset, Israel's parliament, to set up a program for the remembrance of Shoah and Gvura. The archives and the museum was set up at that time, and he also set up a special program at that time for Hasidei Umot HaOlam. This year is the 50th anniversary in which the program actually got started. And this program was to honor non-Jews who risked their lives to save Jews without any financial or other rewards. So why did the rescuers do what they did? Motivations are a very tricky subject, especially when decided by a committee. For example, what do you do if a Jew begins to hide, if a non-Jew begins to hide Jews for money, the money runs out, and then they keep the Jews? Sally Frishberg, who you will hear later, also has experiences with the difficulty of getting some of these murky kinds of motivations honored by Yad Vashem. What do you do if you were a Christian, you rescued a Jewish child, the parents come back after the war, and you decide that you don't want to give the child back, and a court case ensues? Some of you may have read in this week's Jewish newspaper that the Metropolitan Sheptytsky, he was a leader of the Greek Catholic Church in the Ukraine. When the Germans came in, he applauded them. He also set up several SS units, hoping that somehow the Ukrainians will be liberated from the Russians. In the meantime, some Jewish children were sent to him, and he helped save probably about 200 children, some adults, in some of the monasteries and convents. To this date, Yad Vashem has not honored this individual, and there are still some of the survivors who were rescued there fighting to get him honored. As of today, the State of Israel has recognized 22,000 rescuers. Surely there were more. Maybe there were 100,000. Maybe there were 200,000. But when you think about the fact that there were 700 million people living under the German occupation, we are talking about a very small percentage of people who indeed risked their lives. The rescuers did not change the course of history, but their behavior shows us that even under the worst conditions of terror, there are people who disobey a malevolent authority and risk their own lives and that of their families to save a human being. In 1981, while I was a graduate student in social and personality psychology, I embarked on a journey to find out who were these Hasidei Umot HaOlam and what motivated these rare individuals to act differently from those who were passive bystanders and indeed from those who became the killers. Why were some people's hearts and minds different from others? What sparked my interest and motivation of the rescuers was because I grew up knowing that my father was rescued when a Russian baker protected him, while the rest of Ilya's Jews in Belarus, 1,000 Jewish men, women, and children, were intercepted on their way to work Purim morning, 1942, stripped of their clothes, and shot in the town square. Each rescue story is unique, but I did find commonalities amongst the rescuers that transcend their social class, their education, religion, politics, and their gender. The internal struggle to do the right thing transcended all the external hardships faced in rescuing a relationship. I would like to share with you one of my interviews with a rescuer who lived not very far from here, Jean Kowalik, a Polish rescuer who, by the way, was Lou Greenberg's seamstress. In 1939, when the Russians took over the eastern part of Poland, Jean was a single Ukrainian Catholic in her early 20s, living with her recently widowed mother in a tiny two-room house with an attic and a backyard in a small village. Several other siblings lived nearby. One of her brothers was snatched into the Russian army, never to be seen again. Jean gave private sewing classes and helped with farming their small patch of land. As it happens, Jean was friendly with one of the Jewish girls that lived in the town. In 1941, when the Germans invaded, they built a labor camp next door to Jean's house. Jean started to bring food to her friend and other inmates. She was caught by the Germans and shot in the leg. Luckily, the bullet exited her leg, and she never told her mother. Conditions for the local inhabitants were restricting their lives. Local farmers had to give all the cattle to the occupiers. Jean's aunt was incarcerated for disobeying. She left 9 children behind. When Jean's mother took ill, her brother asked the German guard if one of the Jewish inmates could examine her. The doctor came daily to check on her. In the meantime, he asked if the labor camp would be liquidated, will he be able to hide there? Jean and her mother agreed. Her brother had 4 small children, and he could not risk their lives. One night, a knock on the door window was followed by 14 Jews showing up. Jean and her mother took 5, and other relatives took the rest. For the next 2 years, they lived in constant danger. Neighbors were suspicious of the constant smoke from the chimney. Clothes had to be washed and dried inside, lest they suspect that men are living there. When the doctor had diarrhea, Jean's mother told the student that the cats in the attic were making love all year long. A suspicious neighbor came to check up while Jean was shopping for food. The nephew, who was 9 years old, who was standing vigil outside, saw the neighbor and immediately said, "Shh, please don't tell my aunt, but my friend who just left and I were smoking and playing cards." This is how the Jews had spent their time in the attic, and the neighbor had gone to the attic to see what was going on. The Jews, in the meantime, went through a back staircase that they had to escape. 5 people in close quarters had their conflicts, which also involved a love triangle. A few days after liberation, Jean got an anonymous letter. Because you save Jews, if you don't leave the country, you could expect the same thing to happen to you. She fled the village and came to the United States. From the story I just told you, you can begin to appreciate the conditions that made it almost impossible to save a life. Rescuers came from all walks of life. We would tend to think that those who were the most educated would have been less prone to all the Nazi propaganda. Were the educated people more of the rescuers? No, they weren't. We would tend to think that those individuals who were richer, had more resources, would want to use all their resources to try to help. The rescuers were poor as well as rich. We would tend to think that women who are much more compassionate and giving and caring might think more of helping someone. Indeed, there were just as many men as women who were compassionate and caring and giving and loving. We would tend to think that those who were the more liberal would be, again, those who would feel more empathy towards others who were suffering from fascism. No, they weren't. There were just as many who were right-wingers as those who were left-wingers. Each rescuer was unique, yet my research shows patterns in the ways that people became involved in rescue, which gives us very useful clues as to how to nurture and promote human behavior. Everyone agrees that it's not possible to predict who will risk their lives, that of their families and friends, to help acquaintances or even total strangers, and that a single personality type is not a distinguishing factor. However, certain antecedents and family background, values taught, and personality increase the likelihood that particular conditions prevail and help become necessary when the time comes to act. Despite the external differences amongst the rescuers, there are commonalities in their upbringing. The most distinguishing factor amongst the rescuers is that they learned from their parents to appreciate a tolerance and acceptance of people who are different. We have to remember that when the Germans came in to occupy a particular country, they right away began with their propaganda. When you take a country like Holland, for example, where there wasn't a lot of anti-Semitism before the war, right after they occupied Holland, everyone had to go see the propaganda film Das Jude. In that film, the Jews are seen as spreading diseases, as being very filthy, as being all the ones who are responsible for all the economic ills of the society. The following day, there was an us and them society that was created. Of course, there were here and there were rescuers who were anti-Semites. But when I did my research, about 90% of the rescuers grew up with the understanding of tolerance and acceptance of people who are different. For psychological research, that's a very high percentage. Rescuers grew up with parents who saw their parents involved in altruistic behavior, and often they got their children involved in that behavior. Here I'm talking about parents who had got involved in soup kitchens, in churches, who helped when there was a death in the family. Many of the rescuers grew up were children during World War I, and parents were helping those whose fathers and sons were in the army. So that virtue became a habit. Teaching children to be independent and to acknowledge their competence provided rescuers with the ego strength to stand up for their beliefs and to withstand the pressures from critics. The empathy exemplified by the rescuers towards the victim of Nazi persecution when others around them did not came from several sources: loving, warm, nurturing, cohesive family environments, disciplined by inductive reasoning rather than corporal punishment for misbehavior, a personal separation, loss, or an illness experienced in childhood, together with the response from others that facilitated coping with the emotional and physical pain and personal experiences with the Nazi mistreatment. Here you have to realize that many of the rescuers grew up with fathers or siblings who had gone to fight for war. Some of the rescuers had illnesses in childhood. Jean Kowalik, that I told you about, had a respiratory disease, and she stopped. She didn't grow to a normal height. She had very, very loving parents who helped her become independent. She had a beautiful voice, and she wanted to be a singer. And her father says, "You'll never make a living as a singer. You must learn to be a seamstress, and you'll be able to make a living," which she did throughout her life. The making of a rescuer during the Holocaust began with a keen awareness that another human being would die unless something was done to prevent it. The awareness did not come easily. In wartime, nothing is normal. And here we have to remember that in many of the incidents, the Jews themselves did not believe that they were facing death. And sometimes it took the non-Jews who became more aware of what was going on, heard rumors that they believed, and they told the Jews, "You have to go into hiding. We have to help you." Despite the commonalities in socialization and personalities, the motivations of the rescuers of Jews varied. Having interviewed more than 300 rescuers and hundreds of survivors who were rescued, what I found is, despite the fact that there were similarities in their growing up and their socialization and values, how they got involved in the rescue varied. The majority of the rescuers were individuals that I call moral rescuers. These are individuals who felt, "I couldn't live with myself if I let this person die." These individuals felt either a cognitive sense about justice, this is the right thing to do, or morality came from a sense of pity and compassion and a sense of responsibility. Some of the morality, of course, came from moral religious beliefs. Out of the rescuers I had, about 17% of them felt their sense of morality come from their religious beliefs. With the moral rescuers, some of them were asked for help, while others initiated their own help when they realized that the lives of Jews were endangered. The second motivation I call Judeophiles. These are individuals who felt a particular love, a relationship with Jewish people. Either they worked with Jews, or they had Jewish neighbors, or they had classmates who were Jewish. They were friends for quite a while. And these Judeophile relationships, the rescue began with somebody you knew, but very often extended to Jews that they did not know. I should also say, by the way, that some of the Judeophiles were individuals who never met a Jew. They were evangelists who felt that they knew Jews from Bible stories. And when someone came to say, can you hide a Jew, they felt that they already knew who the Jews were and had this sense of kinship with the Jews. The third motivation were individuals that I call ideological network rescuers. These were individuals who were ideologically opposed to Nazism. So at first they didn't think about the Jews. And here I'm talking about many of those who were ideological networks were individuals who were university students, who were in sororities and fraternities. And when the Germans invaded their country, they began to have leaflets. If they could take up arms, some of them took up arms. And then they set up all these networks for false identification papers, for ration food, food cards for individuals. They found hiding places for people in the resistance in case they were being caught. When they realized that the lives of the Jews were endangered, they already had mechanisms that were set up, and they were able to begin to help the Jews. And when you were in a network, you obviously had an opportunity to be able to help many more people. You had many more resources. Many of those who are in the networks have not been honored by Yad Vashem, and part of the reason is that individuals did not know who rescued them. Many of those in the network had a network name, and you very often only knew one person who brought you in, the person that you brought. In case you got caught, then you would not have any names to reveal, and so it was a safety measure. The fourth category I call detached professionals. These are the individuals who were the lawyers, the doctors, the teachers, the social workers. Many of you, of course, know the Anne Frank story, Mee Peace, who tried to rescue the Frank family. Her husband was a social worker, and during the day he would go from house to house where Jews were hiding and give them food ration cards, and Mee Peace did not even know that that's what he was doing as a social worker during the day. A very special category of the professionals, the detached professionals, are the diplomats. And today, of course, we honor Wallenberg. This past fall, I had an opportunity to meet the daughter of Fang Shan-ho. He was a Chinese consulate that was stationed in Vienna. And during the Anschluss, he ran to his Jewish friend's house, who turned out to have been taken to a concentration camp. And when the Germans came in, he told them who he was, and they left. He then stamped probably about 2,000 visas to go to Shanghai. Even though one did not need a visa to go to Shanghai, you couldn't get out of Austria without a visa. And so many Jews survived. 18,000 Jews survived going through, staying in Shanghai. One of the things that happened to the diplomats Diplomats were not killed for risking their lives. Also, when you were a diplomat, you could not have a secret self. Everybody knew if you stamped visas, people knew that you stamped visas. So most of the diplomats lost their diplomatic status, and they also lost their pensions afterwards and had very difficult lives after they were found to be helping so many Jews. The fifth category are child rescuers. These are individuals who began rescuing through their parents asking, and very often continued on their own. Children look very innocent if they're with an adult. So children were sent into ghettos. Children very often transported Jews from one area to another. If a woman is sitting with a child on a train, it looks very innocent, and that helped many Jews survived with the help of children. As you can see, the making of a rescuer is complex, and sustaining such courageous behavior is often beyond our imagination as we think about whether we would be able to undertake such life and death risks for so many years. But my research shows that if we imbue our children with love, inculcate them with values that promote tolerance rather than constantly creating us and them categories, provide them with independence, competence, and opportunities to help others, we will increase the propensity of having more caring, giving individuals. This past spring, I had the good fortune to attend the YU graduation, and I was privileged to hear the president of NYU, John Sexton. His message to the graduates resonated for me, the most important value I learned from my encounter with the rescuers. And again, I repeat, a tolerance and acceptance of people who are different. Eva Sandler, the wife of Rabbi Jonathan and mother of the two boys, Arya, age 5, and Gabriel, age 3, who were killed in Toulouse by Mohammed Merah, stressed that her husband was sensitive to all of God's creatures, always searching for ways to reveal the goodness in others. Again, a message of tolerance that can get us through difficult days. The annihilation of European Jewry has no redemptive meaning, but it teaches us about the evil and the good of which human beings are capable. Those who ignored the mass murders, those millions of bystanders, were unable to transcend their narrow self-interest and see others as human beings just like themselves. Those few, however, who were able to become what psychohistorian Robert J. Lifton calls species selves, people who can reach beyond their own nationalities and embrace those of others, those who acted even in the face of unimaginable risk, were indeed, in the words of Hannah Senesh, our poet and partisan. There are people whose brilliance continues to light the world, though they are no longer among the living. They light the world for humanity. The rescuers, as always, will show us the way. Thank you.
is two cities, and in the middle is the so-called blue Danube. For me, is the red Danube. That's what it was. And they took people down there, the Hungarian Nazis, and they roped 3 people together, and they shot the middle. They all fell. And if they saw a movement, they shot again so that to be sure. Not many people by themselves somehow got out. But it was a terribly cold winter, as I said, and the Danube was frozen with big slabs of ice. So Ralph came home the third night, and there was no moonlight, no stars, just cold and dark. And he turned to us the first time. Usually only he talked to the man, the Red Cross. How many of you can swim? I have a big mouth. I put up my hand. I said, best swimmer in school. He said, let's go. And as you saw me coming in like a teddy bear, that's how I was dressed, and a hat and a glove. And we went down on the other side. The Hungarians didn't even hear us coming because they were so busy roping and shooting. And we stood on the left, way over. We had doctors and nurses in cars, and then we had people outside to pull us out. 4 of us, 3 men and me, we jumped. And thanks to the ice, the ropes hang on to it. And we saved people out, but only 50. And then we were so frozen that we couldn't do it anymore. But without Raoul Wallenberg, we wouldn't have saved even one single person.
Rabbi Yisrael Samantha once said, "When I was young, I wanted to change the world. I tried, but the world did not change. Then I tried to change my town, but the town did not change. Then I tried to change my family, but my family did not change. Then I knew, first, I must change myself." This is the approach that rescuers in the Holocaust adopted. They did not rely on anyone else to act for change. Rather, they themselves acted to help change the lives of Jews they rescued. Sally Frishberg can testify to the activism that her rescuer displayed during the Holocaust. Ms. Frishberg was born in Poland in 1934 and lived in occupied Poland until 1942, when she was forced into hiding. At the age of 8, she was sheltered by a Polish Catholic farmer in his attic for 2 years. After the war, she eventually settled in the United States, where she taught at Fort Hamilton High School for 31 years. Currently, she volunteers as a gallery educator at the Museum of Jewish Heritage in New York. She speaks regularly, convinced that if young people know the truth, they will make an effort to build a better world. Ms. Frishberg is the winner of the New York State Louis E. Yachner Award in 2005 for outstanding contributions to New York State education about the Holocaust and other violations of human rights. Tonight we have the privilege of hearing from Ms. Frishberg as she tells us about her experience with her rescuer during the Holocaust. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce Ms. Sally Frishberg.
I thank each and every one of you for inviting me here tonight. It is, for me, an extraordinary pleasure to be with you, remembering those we loved and lost, and whose places can never be refilled by anyone else. As you heard, I was condemned to die at the age of 8 in 1942. And yet, here I am. You know also that the world was meant to be made Juden rein. Jews were to be eliminated forever. And yet, here you are, and we are together, and we know what we stand for, and we know that we will never give up. In spite of the heavy burden of memories that many of us bring with us, we will fight on and on, because giving up is not an option. So the struggle goes on. For me, it began in a tiny little Polish town when I was born to a young Jewish couple. I was the first of their children, and soon there were more. By the time the war began, they had 5 little girls. In 1939, I was 5 years old, and I had 2 sisters and then twin sisters, and we were 5. I lost the younger of the twin sisters soon after she was born, because it was already wartime and there was no way to help her special needs. The other clung to life, and we struggled to live on. And maybe it was a good thing that we encountered a German officer who lived with us in our house, as was often done then, because our town was too small to house army personnel, and so the soldiers lived with the citizens of the town. And Mr. Arnold, a Munich school teacher who came from Bavaria, where Hitler had risen to power, and who understood that he was up to no good and that we were in for a very difficult time. He and my father played chess very often and exchanged thoughts about what was going on in the world. And Mr. Arnold began to tutor my father to understand that this war was different than any other war. In this war, we won't send our young people to the front to duke it out and then come home if they survive and try to live normally. In this war, children will die, mothers and fathers, grandparents, sick people. There'll be no mercy in this war, he said. And therefore, it is your duty to try and think of what you will do should you face that. And I really feel that my father's consciousness began to rise then as a result of the warnings that Mr. Arnold persisted in having my father understand. Soon after, Mr. Arnold received orders and went to the Eastern Front, where he no doubt died, as most German soldiers did. And we stayed behind and wondered, what will happen to us? How will it happen? And we began to find out very soon In the beginning, when the Germans invaded, they had placards put up in the town square that told the citizens of the town, all citizens must do such and such. All citizens may not do such and such. And this went on. Suddenly, the placard said, all Jews must hand in all their valuables to headquarters. Notice the segregation. Notice the separation. We are no longer citizens. We are simply Jews who can be told whatever they want to tell us and expect us to do it. Well, my mother was a feisty little 5-footer who said she will not give them her jewelry. And she sewed every bit of jewelry she had into the bottoms of her hems, of her skirt hems. Seeing my mother at work, my father said, and I will not give up my dollars. My father had brothers in the United States, and because they earned some money, they worked hard but earned some money, and always sent some home in their envelopes. My father hoarded those dollars. He never spent a dollar. He spent his useless zloty, the Polish currency, because it was worthless, but he hoarded his dollars. And now he sewed the dollars into the shoulder pads of his jackets. My mother had a fur coat, and she said, I will not give them my fur coat. And my father said, you're crazy. You're going to sacrifice your family for a coat? What's wrong with you? Don't you know they'll come and get it? Everybody knows you have a fur coat. And my mother said, I'll find a way. And she went to work and found a way. She wrapped her fur coat up as small as she could make it and took it to her next door neighbor, a Catholic friend. And she said to her, one day we will have normal lives. And when we do, I will come back and you will give me the coat. And the lady said, but of course I will. And the deal was made, and we sat back and waited for what would happen next. By the way, to the best of my recollection, the only thing we gave up by taking it to headquarters was our Sabbath candlesticks, because they were heavy, they were tall and clumsy, they were easily identified as a Jewish ritual item. They were too risky a business. And so my mother did turn in her candlesticks and mourn them forever after. And we waited for the next step, the next shoe to drop, and it did. All Jews must wear the Star of David. Of course we had to wear something to identify us, because the young German soldiers who had been directed to give us special treatment, which was no favor, couldn't tell us apart from our Catholic neighbors. They couldn't tell who, looking very much the same like his neighbor, white skin, always white skin, poor dress, speaking Polish. Who were the Jews in our small towns and who were not the Jews? And so there was a kind of lull in persecution of the Jews, because they simply couldn't tell in the small towns who the Jews were. Well, their government helped them. We were now identifiable in my community by a white armband, blue stripe, blue Star of David in the middle. And again, there's a pause, and we wait. What will happen? And it didn't take very long. In the late summer of 1942, the placard said, "All Jews must come to the railroad station." Date and time were given. And my father said, "We won't go." And he sent word out to every member of the Jewish community in our region, not only our town, in our region. And on the day of resettlement, that's what that infamous day is called, no one appeared at the railroad station except my grandfather. My grandfather was a darling man who read a great deal and believed what he read, that civilized, educated, bright, intelligent people who are cultured, who strive to achieve the most that they can for humanity, don't mistreat humanity. He believed it. I don't. My grandfather was wrong. And for his faith in mankind, he was the first victim of our family. He went to the railroad station. He was the only Jew there. And we never saw him again, though we know what happened to him. And the pain of it stays. That never heals. So, what are we going to do? My parents have 4 little children. I am now the oldest, and I'm 8 years old. The others are 6, 4, 2. How are we going to manage? What are we going to do? Where are we going to go? There were none so lonesome as the Jews of Europe. There was no one who would help, not in Europe and not outside of Europe. So we did the only thing available to us. The night before resettlement day, we left home and we went into the farm fields. We were near farms. We went into the farm fields, and when we got there, we saw these huge piles of grains that had been harvested. They were built into, I used to call it pyramids, but I understand it's better to say haystacks. And they were built into these haystacks, and we approached them. We were my mother, father, their 4 children, and my aunt and uncle, and their 3 children, the same ages as my younger siblings. And we would approach these haystacks, and we would dig out the bottom. And then we'd creep inside and pull back what we had dug out to cover us. And we would stay there all of the next day. When the sun rose and the farmers appeared in the fields, we were hidden inside the haystacks. At night, when the farmers left their work, their field work, and went home, we crept out and we walked to another field. We had no idea where we're going and whether we should go there. It was just a matter of feeling that we cannot stay around for someone to notice us and bring the Nazis to kill us. So we walked to another field, and on the way we shook the trees and picked the fruit and finally settled in some field somewhere. My father had an extraordinary understanding of where he is all the time. I never know, even now in the brightest light, where I am, but my father knew, and so we didn't repeat where we were. We kept going to new fields. And we wondered, how long can we do this? What will happen to us? Surely no one will help us. Europe was very anti-Semitic. The European people were pleased to see the Jews chased out because now they could have the homes, the stores, whatever. Who will help us? No one. For sure no one will help us. But we must try. We must try. America is already in the war. That means that the pressure on Hitler is greater. Therefore, maybe he will be destroyed quickly and we will be saved. And so we kept trying. But the weather kept changing and it got harder and our worries grew more intense. And then one night, we heard a whistle. And my mother and uncle both recognized the whistle. This was a whistle that they used, this was a tune that they used to whistle when they were youngsters, playing with their Catholic friends. And that's how they got together. They followed the sound of the whistle. And my mother and uncle said, should we or shouldn't we? And they did. They took a chance. And they whistled back, and in no time at all, out of the darkness, leaps this body. And it turns out to be my hero. Stanislav Grocholski was a childhood friend of my mother's and her entire family's. And when he got through hugging and kissing them, he said to them, you think you're safe doing what you're doing, but you're not. Everybody in every town is doing nothing but gossiping about you. They're describing you. That's how I figured out who is here, because the descriptions are so accurate. You are not safe. Somebody's going to give you away. We must find a better way, he said. There is someone who stands with us? How unbelievable. He came every night with the news of where it is not safe to go. Up to now, we would have blundered into these killers, but now we knew where they had already searched and where we mustn't go. He brought whatever he could. He was a poor man. He had a family. He had to struggle to support them. Now he had to share what he had with us. And my mother had the audacity, the chutzpah, to say to him, Stashik, everything you do we are grateful for, but it isn't enough. We will not survive the way things are. We can't do it. You must build us a shelter. And he said, a shelter? With what? You can't get a nail. You can't get a board. I haven't got a hammer. How am I going to build you a shelter? And do you know how quickly we'd be found out? That's the worst thing we can do. My mother said, do something. Do something. This will not work anymore. We haven't the strength, the energy. It's getting colder. The discomfort is greater. Please, Stashik, do something. And he said, Sivya, if I were alone, if I didn't have a wife and children, I could think and do something. But all I can think of is, I'm responsible for a family. How can I ignore them to help you? What kind of fairness is this? The moment my mother heard wife, she, like a laser, went for the wife. And she said to him, Stashik, you go home and tell your wife that my sister-in-law and I have jewelry in our skirts, that my husband has dollars in his shoulder pads. Every bit of this is hers if she cooperates. He went home. He spoke to his wife. His wife has a different twist on it. I met her, and I find it hard not to believe what she said. But he came to us with the news, okay, it's agreeable. She will do it. She'll cooperate. But she wants your fur coat. My mother didn't have the fur coat. So she and my father took off at night. They went to the neighbor that had the coat, knocked on the window. The neighbor was hysterical. Go away, you're gonna get me killed. I'm not supposed to talk to Jews. Please go away. My mother said, all we want is the coat and we'll leave immediately. That's all we need. And she said, you said you'd come back after the war for the coat. So please do that. Don't ask for it now. And my mother said, you don't understand. If I don't get the coat now, we will all die. You will be the cause of our death. And one day, when you meet your Maker, you will have to confess to that. Is that what you want? And the woman became quite upset. She was a Catholic woman who did not want to meet her Maker with bloody hands, as my mother told her she would. So she said, come back tomorrow. I must speak to my priest. He will advise me what to do. My mother was afraid to go back tomorrow night, so a few nights later she and my father went back, and there was the coat, ready to go. There was milk and bread for the children, and good wishes from the priest for a safe journey. And we turned all our possessions over to the Gracholskis, and when it was very dark, Mr. Gracholski lined us up, used to come every single night, no matter what the weather. When it was very dark, he lined us up and said, not a word, not a sound. We don't know who will hear what. And he walked us to his home. He had the ladder ready to take us to his attic. The attic was ready with hay all around and buckets for us to use as toilet. And he provided a home for us in his home. And every night he brought the ladder back to the opening, never left it there for fear his children might find us there if they were of a mood to look for us. But so he, every night, moved the ladder into place, came up the ladder, cleaned the buckets, that was our toilet, and then when that was done, he brought us a pot of boiled beans and potatoes. And I love to brag about how great I look in spite of all the beans and potatoes and nothing else. At any rate, we were in Mr. Gracholski's attic for 2 years, and he took care of us. Every night he came and did what he could. The diet was very limited, but he really didn't have very much more. Poverty was all around. 2 years later, we were liberated by the Russians, but we had lost my baby sister, whom we brought up with us, too young and weak to take it. She was dying, it was clear. So my mother and father put her in a little basket and walked her to our native town and put her on the doorsteps of the church. And the priest who saw to it that we got our fur coat, saw to it that my sister got a home, a young couple took her and took care of her, but the effort failed. She died soon after she got into their arms because she had no more days. And then my little cousin, also too young, he died in the attic and was laid to rest nearby. And after him, my aunt, his mother, died and is resting near her son. During the course of our stay there, during a winter night, Mr. Grocholski whispered to my mother and uncle that 4 brothers were hiding in the forest. And my mother said, hiding in the forest in this cold? How are they going to survive? They can't. You must bring them here. And he resisted mightily. He said, you know I can't do that. You know I have to observe a curfew. I can't go out at night. And by day, we'll be shot in no time at all. Please, don't ask for the impossible. And my mother couldn't understand that, and she kept begging. And he brought my 4 uncles, and he saved those of us that were there, left living there, and my 4 uncles. So, Mr. Stanislav Grocholski of Ujajowice, Poland, saved 12 Jews when the rest of the world turned its back on all of us. And we 12 survived and came to the United States and made good lives for ourselves. And last January, we were proud, 28 of us were proud to be in Poland, witness to the fact that Mr. Grocholski, because of the efforts, my sisters, was bestowed a recognition as a righteous Jetta. And we go on. And I hope that you young people will never, never permit the sort of thing that happened to us. And I hope that we will all enjoy fruitful lives and live on and on. And I thank you for your attention.
When remembering loved ones we have lost, we as Jews often commemorate their absence with the presence of a flame, the lighting of a candle. This is a symbol of the fire of the soul, the small spark that gives immense light, the tiny candle that gives heat. We find it crucial to recognize the losses suffered and the lives lost, so that no human life is ever again seen as just a number, as just a spark. In keeping with this year's theme of Remember the Future, let us light 6 candles in the memories of the deceased, as well as in the memory of the unborn, the future that must know of the past. May the memory of those no longer with us be a light unto the future. We call upon Ms. Sally Frishberg to lead us in lighting the first candle for all who suffered and perished under Nazi tyranny.
These are the words of Elie Wiesel. We must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere. When human lives are in danger, when human dignity is in jeopardy, national borders and sensitivities become irrelevant. I belong to a traumatized generation, one that experienced abandonment and solitude of our people. The death of millions and the nightmares of thousands of survivors will forever leave a tremendous hole in our beings. As members of the Jewish people and members of humanity at large, let us continue to preserve their legacy. May their memory be a light unto the future.
We call upon Rabbi Yosef Blau to lead us in lighting the second candle for the religious life diminished and destroyed by the Holocaust.
Many religious leaders strove to maintain a sense of humanity by continuing to be spiritual guides for their suffering Jewish community. A Jew in the ghetto once asked Rabbi Ephraim Ashri of the Kovno ghetto if he should continue to say Shelo Asani Aved despite his enslavement in the ghetto. Rabbi Ashri responded that despite our physical captivity, we were more obligated than ever to recite the blessing, to demonstrate to our enemies that even if physically we were slaves, as a people, we remain spiritually free. Let us now remember the vibrant religious livelihood which was attacked by our enemies. May their memory be a light unto the future.
We call upon Dr. Eva Fogelman to lead us in lighting the third candle for the educators and the intellectuals killed in the Shoah.
Janusz Korczak was a brilliant pediatrician, author, and orphans educator who perished along with his pupils. As Vladislav Spielman recounts in his book, The Pianist, he had the chance to save himself, and it was with only difficulty that he persuaded the Germans to take him too. He had spent long years of his life with children, and now, in this last journey, he could not leave them alone. I am sure that even in the gas chamber, the old doctor must have whispered with one last effort, "It's all right, children, it will be all right." so that at least he could spare his little charges the fear of passing from life to death. Let us now remember the lives of educators, intellectuals, and teachers of the previous generation who were killed. May their memory be a light unto the future.
We call upon Mr. Chezi Jessen to lead us in lighting the fourth candle for righteous Gentiles who risked and sacrificed their lives for the sake of others.
In the midst of such suffering and under the threat of death for all who risked their lives, righteous rescuers helped a number of victims live through the war and make their way to survival. One such rescuer was Raoul Wallenberg, a Swedish architect who saved almost 100,000 Hungarian Jews by issuing them protective passes. In the words of Carl Bildt, Swedish Minister for Foreign Affairs, "No other Swede in modern times has made such major, such manifest, and such difficult contributions to the service of mankind or humanity as Raoul Wallenberg. His name has given honor to Sweden. Let us now remember these brave rescuers. May their memory be a light unto the future."
We call upon Mr. David Jaspi, a student at Yeshiva University, to lead us in lighting the fifth candle for the resistance efforts of Jewish partisan groups.
Kulo olam kulo, gesher tzar miod, v'ayikar lo lefached klal. Bands of Jewish partisans bravely fought to undermine the Nazi authorities and to rescue fellow Jews. One example was the Bielski partisans, led by the orphan Bielski brothers, who operated primarily in Belarus between 1942 and 1944 and helped save 1,200 Jews from a terrible fate. They formed a makeshift community that included a medical clinic, a tannery, and multiple artisan workshops. Through these efforts, they sustained a semblance of life. In the words of Tuvia Bielski, "I'd rather save one old Jewish woman than kill 10 Nazis." Let us now remember the brave lives of resistance fighters which were sacrificed for the safety of others. May their memory be a light unto the future.
We call upon Ms. Shira Golovchek, a student at Yavna Academy, to lead us in lighting the sixth candle for all the children who suffered and perished at the hands of the Nazis.
Anne Frank once wrote, "Although I'm only 14, I know quite well what I want. I know who is right and who is wrong. I have my opinions, my own ideas and principles. And although it may sound pretty mad from an adolescent, I feel more of a person than a child. I feel quite independent of anyone." Let us now remember the young and hopeful lives lost, the hopeful spirits that perished in the Holocaust. May their memory be a light onto the future.
משמיים וראה, כי היינו רק בכלס בגויים, נחשבנו כצאן לטבח יובל, להרוג ולאבד ולמכה ולחרפה. אמן. משמיים וראה, כי היינו רק בכלס בגויים, נחשבנו כצאן לטבח יובל, להרוג ולאבד ולמכה ולחרפה. ובכל זאת, ובכל זאת, ובכל זאת, שמחה לא שכחנו. ובכל זאת, שמחה לא שכחנו. אל משמיים וראה, כי היינו רק בכלס בגויים, נחשבנו כצאן לטבח יובל, להרוג ולאבד ולמכה ולחרפה.
Am Yisrael Chai. El Malei Rachamim Dayan Amanos Chayav Yisomim Ha'al Nosech Hashem v'sisapek l'dam Yisrael shenishpach kamayim hamtzei menucha nechona al kanfei hashechina b'malos kidashim mutahorim kizar harakiyah mirim umazirim lenishmosehem shel rivavos alfei Yisrael hanoshim v'noshim ילדים וילדות שנהרגו ושנשחטו ונשרפו ונחנקו ונקברו חיים בארצות אשר נגע בהן יד הצורר הגרמני וגרף כולם קדושים וטהורים והם גאונים וצדיקים ארזי הלבנון אדירי התורה בגן עדן תהי מנוחתם וכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם בססר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצור החיים אס נשמתם אדוני הוא נחלתם וינוחו בשלום על משכבם ונאמר אמן.
Nelson Mandela once said, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it." The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers fear. The men and women who chose to put their lives in danger to save a fellow human being, they have conquered fear. Not one rescuer ever asked to be honored. They did not ask for recognition at all. Yet, on this night, we remember those who perished in the Holocaust and honor those few men and women who showed just how much impact a single action can make. We will not forget what happened in the past. However, we hope to also learn from the past and from the lofty example set by the rescuers of the Holocaust, and embed in ourselves and in others the belief that we can affect change, one action at a time, to help forge a better future. We must continue to fight against evil and injustice, to keep true the promise of never again. On behalf of the Student Holocaust Education Movement, I want to thank everyone who was involved in the preparation for this ceremony, everyone that participated, and most importantly, all that have attended. We would appreciate if you take the time to fill out the suggestion cards and place them in the box outside. The buses will be returning to 245 Lexington at 11 p.m. Thank you and good night.